wish I had gotten like a taste of the debt-free life because I had never experienced it. I didn't even know what that looked like. I've had debt since I was 17 years old, right? Money was not a conversation growing up. The only thing we heard about money was we don't have enough of it, so don't ask us for it. The answer is always going to be no. I see that happen to so many women, right? And I don't want women to ever feel trapped or like they're stuck and can't do what's best for them.
Sabrosura pa' ti que que.
Hello, everyone. This is Pam, de Café con Pam, the bilingual podcast that features Latine and people of the global majority who break barriers, change lives, and make the world a better place. Welcome to episode 389 of Café con Pam. Today, we have a conversation with Giovanna Gigi Gonzalez. Gigi is a femfluencer, financial educator, public speaker, and author of the best-selling book Cultura and Cash. Gigi teaches personal finance and career navigation to first generation at various organizations and on her social media accounts for the First Gen Mentor. Her book was named 5 Books to Help Kickstart a Financial Wellness Journey by the Seattle Times and a Best Personal Finance Book to Read in 2024 by Business Insider. She's originally from California, but now calls Chicago home. In her free time, she enjoys catching up with her favorite reality TV shows and trying new restaurants in the city. Bueno, listeners, this conversation with Gigi was a lot of fun. It really felt like no time went by. At the end, we actually went overtime, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so over our allotted time. And even her was like, I didn't notice because we had a lot of fun talking about her journey and getting into this role of being a influencer and your first gen mentor, which is super fun. And so I hope you enjoy my conversation with Gigi Gonzalez. Hola Gigi, ¿cómo estás?
Yo bien, ¿y tú, Pam?
Muy bien. A pleasure to have you here at Café con Pam. So the first question we always ask is, what is your heritage?
I am Mexican American. Yeah, so daughter of Mexican immigrants from Mexicali, Baja California.
And you grew up in a border town, no?
Yeah. So it's a border town in California, 2 hours east of San Diego. My parents met and fell in love in Mexicali, and then they got pregnant with me. And then my grandma had heard that if you had your baby in the U.S., that you could have that baby automatically have U.S. citizenship. Now we know it as the 14th Amendment, birthright citizenship that Donald Trump is trying to get rid of.
Yep.
So they had me that way. And then basically they popped me out in the hospital in El Centro, which is on the American side. And then as soon as my mom was discharged from the hospital, we went back to Mexicali. So they secured that for me, which I'm so thankful. And I'm so thankful my grandma, looked into that and saw what the process was because my life would have been very different. And I grew up there aged 0 to 5. And then I went and lived in the States for a bit, moved back to Mexicali in second grade, and then went back to the States and stayed there for good until my parents divorced when I was 16. And then we went back to Mexicali. So there's been a lot of back and forth. So that's why I very much consider myself a border town kid.
Totally. And when you say back to the US, was it Calexico el Centro?
Yeah, so the first time that we moved, so again, I always my life was always in Mexico, right? So 0 to 5. And then my mom's like, "Oh, I got a job in the Coachella Valley," right? So you know where that's at. Yeah, Coachella
Yes.
Valley. We're gonna go live with your aunt. And we moved there. We were there for a year when I was in first grade. And then in second grade, my mom and my dad got back together, and then that was in Mexicali. So then that's actually when I met him because I hadn't met my dad because they just are drama and they cannot be in the same room. So they introduced us when I was like 6 or 7, and my brother too, who was like 6 at the time. So then they got back together. So to be a family all together under one place, we went back to Mexicali. And then I think my parents realized, hey, we can have better opportunities in the States. So we went back to the Coachella Valley. We were there for 2 years. So I spent third and fourth grade there. Ultimately, we landed in the Imperial Valley, which is El Centro, like where you mentioned Calexico.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so El Centro is where I did fifth grade through like high school senior. So that's why I consider that my hometown, because that's where I spent the most formative years,
Yeah,
in El Centro, California, where it's super hot and there's not a lot going on.
I know. And I was gonna say Southern California, but I think Southern California, and I don't know because I'm from Mexico City, but I think Southern California is like San Diego, LA,
Yeah.
and like El Centro, like the inland part is like the
Yeah.
border. I don't know how it is. It's, I guess technically it's still SoCal, but you wouldn't necessarily place it.
Is geographically SoCal, but yeah, when most people think of SoCal, I definitely think LA, San Diego, Orange County. So I always tell people I'm from a small agricultural town, border town, 2 hours east of San Diego. Because they're always like, wait, isn't that Arizona? I'm like, no, there's still California,
Right.
2 hours east. California's big, yeah. So like, oh, so like it's right in the corner before Arizona. I'm like, there you go, yeah.
So with this like short version of your family dynamics, you've just shown us how there's a lot of intricacies and ups and downs and all around things. And obviously, not obviously, but probably money wasn't a conversation that was had. And you share a lot of it in Cultura and Gash, which is your book. And how was it for you to not have that experience and now teach it about it?
Yeah, no, money was not a conversation growing up. The only thing we heard about money was we don't have enough of it, so don't ask us for it. The answer is always going to be no. There was nothing beyond that, especially any sort of education on, what a checking account was, how credit cards work, nothing of that. So I had to learn the hard way by making mistakes as an adult, lots of mistakes, getting myself into credit card debt, pulling out too much student loans, not investing aggressively at first. At least I got started thanks to a coworker who encouraged me to opt into my 401k for my first job, but it was very minimal, just enough to get the match. I wasn't prioritizing savings. I was just kind of living paycheck to paycheck and spending the rest. So yeah, it wasn't until all the lessons that I mentioned in the book, which are having nightmare roommates, bad bosses, toxic boyfriends, like these bad living situations that I couldn't get out of because of money, because I didn't have enough money, was when I realized, okay, like I can't keep living like this. What am I doing wrong? And that's when I decided to go on this journey of self teaching myself financial literacy, and I learned all that I know now. And yeah, so once I started reading all these books, it was great, right? Because I got all the basics on how to create a financial plan for myself. But then there was also this like fire lit inside me of like, this is so unfair that I had to struggle so much and that
Hmm.
I had to seek out this information. Why don't people teach us this stuff? Like, this is such an essential life skill. And I looked into ways to sharing my knowledge with other women, specifically women of color. And that's how I came across the YWCA in Phoenix. So at the time I was living in Phoenix, I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and they were looking for volunteer financial educators. They had the curriculum for you to facilitate. All you had to do was be a financial professional and then just reviewing the material before. So I would teach like insurance 101, budgeting 101 through them. And it was in small groups. The attendance was very low. So it'd be like 5 people.
¿En inglés o en español?
And in English. They
Okay.
always ask me in Espanol. They're like, "There's such a need," and I'm like, "I'm sorry, I just don't feel comfortable enough with my Spanish. I don't have the language for that financial jargon in Spanish, to
Claro.
be able to, like, I don't know how to say interest rate. I think I do tasa de interés or
La
some
tasa de
tasa,
interés, claro.
something, yeah, something like that. Yeah. So I don't have that language yet to be able to do it in Spanish, unfortunately. Although I'd love to work on it, and I actually have signed up for Spanish tutoring, and I'm starting that soon. So that's how I started. My work as a financial educator was on a volunteer basis in 2019.
Pero you end up quitting your job to start your
Yeah,
online journey, no?
yeah, I did. Yeah,
At what point were you like, it's time?
yeah. So the financial education stuff was a fun hobby. It was my passion. It was something that I did on the side while I had a full time corporate job in investment management working for Northern Trust. So my role there, I always like sharing what it is because people are like, "Oh, so you were an advisor," and I'm like, "No, I was an advisor. There's so many jobs in
In
finance
finance,
outside
yeah.
of that." Yeah. So I said my job, I work with large institutional clients. So I would do investment performance reporting, which meant that for the clients that we had, like public pension plans or endowments, foundations, just big, large pools of money that was invested with our firm, I would conduct the reports and analyze how their investments did for the week, for the month, for the year. And then I would give those results to our consultants, right, who would then offer the financial advice to our institutional clients. So it was more of like a support role within the
Mm.
finance world. But yeah, their job wouldn't exist without mine, right? Because they need that feedback loop to be able to see what they need to
Mm.
change in their investments. And I loved it. I really loved my career. I specialized in it. I earned a designation in it. It was nice. I just dealt with spreadsheets all day and listened to podcasts. Had a great work life balance. And like I said, on my free time, I would volunteer. But then what changed was in March of 2021, I started posting TikTok content, specifically on the same money tips that I was sharing in my community through the YWCA. And again, I just did it as a fun hobby. Just I'm like, oh, I can reach more people because the internet's bigger than the 5, 6 attendees I'm getting in my
Right.
seminars. Yeah. So that's how that was the thinking going into it. But then I went viral the next month when my videos like hit, I don't know, a couple million views. And with that, I gained an overnight following. I got 100K overnight. And then that's when I started getting DMs for paid opportunities. Like, hey, will you come to our college and teach us about budgeting 101? Like, our students would love to hear from you. We love your content. Or from brands, even like, hey, can we sponsor you for a video to talk about our investing app, right? Just different opportunities like that.
Mhm.
Which, like, that was fun because I'm like, I never did this for money. I didn't even know it could get paid.
Yeah.
But because of where I worked at Northern Trust, the financial industry is heavily regulated, which means I had to get written permission for any outside income from my 9 to 5. So even
Oof.
if I got a job working as an Uber driver or working at Target, anywhere, I had to get written consent from them first. So I submitted the request and it was immediately denied. They said it was illegal and a reputational risk. Yeah, because they said that I could overplay my position at Northern Trust, and I'm like, "I don't though, I don't even mention you guys."
Why?
Yeah, yeah, and they're like, "No, you can't, it's a liability for us." So, when I got that response, my first initial, reaction was like, "Well, it ends here, like, that's it, I have to keep focusing on my career," and that was fun while it lasted, but then it was through friends and family that kinda made me pause and think, "Wait, like, you are so impassioned about money education, you never shut up about it, and now you have the opportunity to make money talking about this, like, doing what you love." They're like, "We think you should explore this," and I'm like, "No, no, no, I worked so hard for my career, I'm not gonna give this up." And at the time, I was super focused on early retirement. I was on track to retire at 45. I was investing aggressively, so I'm like, "I'm not gonna give, like, the for sure for, like, the unknown,"
Right.
but yeah, after lots of encouragement and some soul searching, I realized that I had to do it because otherwise I would always wonder what if. So I
Mm.
quit my job in June of 2021. So I've been doing this now almost 3.5 years.
I love that.
Yeah.
So let's backtrack a little because you're working in the finance world.
Mhm.
And in the book, for example, you talk about the first gen 5, which are emergency fund, budgeting, debt payoff, credit building, and investing in that order.
Yeah.
Which one was the hardest for you
Personally or to write about?
personally?
Personally, probably the debt.
Say more.
Yeah, because I just felt like I was in such a hole. And I would do the projections of how long it would take until I was out of debt, and it would be like 2 years. It would be if I was aggressive and using every extra penny towards it, and I'm like, "Oh my god, 2 years of just, like, really hitting it hard," and it was discouraging to see how long it would take, and then I would also, kind of be hard on myself for, like, "Why didn't you do better? Like, why did you spend mindlessly on this?" Or so that kinda, like, negative self-talk came into play too. But what I wish I had known, and I write this in the book, is I wish I had gotten like a taste of the debt-free life because I had never experienced it. I didn't even know what that looked like. I've had debt since I was 17 years old,
Yeah.
right? So never as an adult had I been debt-free. And now that I'm debt-free, I was able to share some of the benefits with the readers, with that being like you just have so much more financial flexibility because you don't have that chunk of your money.
Going somewhere.
Yeah, it's yours. It's yours to do with as you want, right? So um yeah, it's really cool. But yeah, that was for sure I think the hardest to tackle out of the five for me.
And how was it for you to have access to huge portfolios when you worked in finance and navigate your own money journey?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers were so big, they didn't feel real,
Wow.
right? Yeah, and I mean, it's not like I actually ever saw the money, it was just literally numbers on a report. But yeah, I mean, that got to a point too where I'm just like, I'm working with money technically, right? Reporting on money, making sure that these investors and their funds are well funded, especially because a lot of our clients were pension plans. So these are pension funds for like janitors, for teachers, right? So I like the work that I did because it was supporting, middle class people. Um, but yeah, then it got to a point where I'm like, what about me? Like here I
Mm,
am struggling with money and I don't even know what I'm doing with my stuff, but it's so different. Personal finance is so different than the financial world in that sense. The one thing about my job was, even though I loved where I worked and I liked the culture, the next step up, if I did want to get a promotion, was for me to have to leave my department and instead work with wealth management clients. So that meant working with the one percenters.
wow.
Yeah, and I didn't want to. I'm like, I that's just not who I wanna work for, like, and then I remember some coworkers being like, "Well, a lot of those people, they have foundations too, and they have philanthropic causes," and I'm like, no," so when this opportunity came for me to teach first gen professionals or first gen students, it just felt much more aligned with my values.
Totally. And also in the book you mentioned, which I resonated with that financial planners don't look at you if like until they do because you're not worth it.
Yeah, and until you have a certain amount in your investment account, it's just not worth it for them because they make money based off how much you have invested, yeah.
And so I had an experience, and I've shared it before, where one of my friends was getting into the financial planning world. And so I guess in the beginning, like you just take
Take
whoever
anybody.
says
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
But it was like really hard for me because I'm like, oh, I have this 401k that I like started when I was 19. I don't know. Like I work for myself. And she's like, well, we'll work with what you have. And so we dug through that 401k that was like forgotten from who knows when. And we started like organizing things and I went to a meeting, and when you're training you get like a buddy.
Mm.
So the meeting was ran by like a total bro. So when you talk about like you avoid the bro jargon, it was like the image. And I left that meeting crying because
Was this with Northwestern Mutual?
yes.
How did I know? I know because I interned for them. And
Yes.
yeah, so I never got to that stage. As soon as I saw their model, which is just like tapping into young students' network, I was like, oh no, you're not gonna get access to my people. And my people don't even have money. So nice try.
Right. Right.
But yeah, so you said you didn't go back
Well, so he basically was like, "So what about like I don't know." Just started using like language that I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Like
douchebag.
bonds
Yeah.
and trusts and like words that I'm like, this was not. And he looked at me like I was the biggest idiot. And I walked away from that meeting and I told her, "I can't. You need to take him away from my account. Like I know I don't make you any money because I probably had like I don't know, like very like $30,000." And but I'm like, I can't, like, I don't want to see him on my, like, when I log in, I don't want, like, and she ended up talking to me and she was like, if you pull your account, I'm going to lose a lot more money than what I'm not making from you. And so, because I'm a good person, it's still there, but whatever. Eventually, we'll figure it out. But that was really painful.
Yeah, I'm so sorry you had that experience. because it's just so condescending, right? It's the
So
same way that, like,
much.
let's say you have like a serious medical concern and you go to the doctor and the doctor starts speaking to you in all this medical language and you're like, huh? Like,
Expecting you to know?
yeah, we're not doctors. We didn't go to medical school. We don't know what you're talking about, right? So it's very important the same way that doctors like break down things in ways that you're able to understand and digest, that financial professionals do the same. So to hear that that was your experience with Northwestern Mutual, to hear that that was your experience, I'm not surprised, but I wish that hadn't been, and hopefully that didn't make you have like a negative taste for kind of the finance space because it's not all like that, you know.
Totally. No, it did for a long time.
Of course,
Like,
yeah.
to where he for a minute, he was like, "Hey, I need you to upload all your banking, all your stuff so I can see it." And I'm like, "Dude, no. Because
Yeah.
why do you need to see all my business if
He
you're not
hadn't
helping
earned your
me?"
trust. You didn't feel that he was in your
No.
corner. Yeah.
And so for a
Yeah.
long time, I didn't open that account. And, like, slowly, I did my own money work because 'cause I'm an EFT practitioner, so I have a whole 30-day
Oh,
tapping challenge for money because I
all
realized
right.
how, like, it was impacting me and my
Yeah.
nervous system because it activates you in ways
Oh,
like
yeah.
the conversation around money, while money is the energy that we use to trade things,
Mm-hmm.
is the energy behind it, that the weight that we put around it and how people, like, treat you based on it, which is
Mm-hmm.
also one of the things that you talk about in the book for when you dedicate it to the women.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I dedicated the book to my grandma and my aunt. My grandma, because again, she's the reason that I have a better life in the US because she convinced my mom to go and have me in the States because my mom just like was kind of going through life. She really didn't have much, she wasn't future focused where my grandma was,
Mm,
right? And she's like, no, we have to do better for your daughter.
her mom.
So yeah, her mom, yeah. So and then and she also raised us while my mom worked in the Coachella Valley. That's why I was in Mexicali from age 0 to 5 because my grandma raised us, so my mom could work and send money because she wasn't making enough in Mexico and my dad wasn't paying child support. So um, I'm very grateful for my grandma. I have a very close relationship to her, and then my aunt Patty, who's my mom's sister, she is also an important maternal figure in my life because she's just a great listener. She's always been supportive. And yeah, she noticed this like nerdiness for money a long time ago, and she would call me Giovanna Chatsky, like Jean Chatsky, who is a very like influential financial pundit, or Giovanna Orman, like Susie Orman.
Yes.
So she was always like, "You should write a book about this," and I'm like, "No." And this was a long time ago, and it's funny how that's what
Here we
happened. So
are.
that's why, yeah, that's why. And I said, and I wrote in the dedication to my aunt Patty, who always said it. You should write a book about that.
Yes. But also you talk about, I think it's at the end,
Mm,
you also mention how a big inspiration is the women that stay in, whether it's the job, the relationship, the situation, the house, because of lack of money.
mhm.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was that woman, right? When I went through my ups and downs, living with the bad roommate, the toxic boss, the shitty boyfriend, right? So I experienced that myself. But then as I've asked questions about my family, I've learned that my grandma put up with a lot of my grandpa's crap. He was a serial cheater, gaslighter, and she felt she couldn't leave because she didn't have any education, any marketable job skills. So she had to stay because financially there was no way she was able to provide for her kids, you know. So they were married a long time, 60 plus years, but it was, if she would have had the financial means to leave, she would have, you know. And my mom too, my mom, you know, my mom and my dad, they got married very young. They were like 20 and 21. So, you know, their brain hadn't fully developed, right? They hadn't fully matured and they're out here having babies. So them too, right? Seeing through my mom how much she had to struggle, was constantly living with my grandma or living with my aunt. moving around so much, there was a lot of instability because my mom didn't have the support of my dad, right? At first with our expenses. But eventually when they got back together, it was a lot more stable to have him and a two-parent household. But yeah, I see that happen to so many women, right? And I don't want women to ever feel trapped or like they're stuck and can't do what's best for them.
And one story that was very deep is the story of your brother
Hmm.
when he moved in and you had to make a decision,
Hmm.
and how that you knew that was going to affect, and it did not affect, like,
Yeah.
ultimately the relationship with your mom, and like
Yeah.
things spiraled from there. How did you decide to make that boundary?
Yeah. So for anybody that hasn't read the book, Pam's talking about, there's an anecdote that I share where I had invited my brother to share a studio apartment with me in Pasadena, California. So again, I'm emphasizing studio apartment because there's not a lot of
One
space
tiny
in a
room.
studio. Yeah, for two adults in their 20s, right? It was very much supposed to be short term, just like 2 months tops, right? While he searched for a job, got a job of his own, and was able to save for a deposit and move out. But it didn't work out for a lot of reasons. He's very disrespectful. He wasn't getting any callbacks, and I just didn't feel that I was being appreciated for letting him live there rent free. So I gave him a deadline of like, hey, if you don't have a job by this time, like you gotta go. And when I mean you gotta go, it's not like you're gonna go live under a bridge. Like he was gonna have to go back home with my mom, which is where he lived in Mexicali. And I made it clear to my mom and my dad so that they were all aware, right, of how I was feeling. And my dad understood because he's like, you're sacrificing such a small space. And if he's not doing his part, then he's got to go. Where my mom, my brother's my mom's favorite. And she was like, you better not. Like, you need to give him a chance. He hasn't been there long enough. And I'm like, I have, blah, blah. So that was a whole dispute. And then ultimately she says, if you send him back, I'm going to take your car away, which the car she was referring to was a car that she helped me buy when I was 17. So I was 17 going to be 18 and I was starting my first job as a waitress. So I needed transportation to get to work because as you know, in Southern California, it's very hard to rely on public transportation. It's
Hmm.
it's very inefficient, it takes forever. So you really need a car to be able to kind of function as an adult. So my mom went to a dealership and she couldn't afford to buy me the car. So what she did instead is she put $2,000 down for a down payment. And then she handed over the keys and said, hey, you have a job now working as a waitress. Use
It's
that
yours.
paycheck, yeah, to pay for
Oof.
the car payment, the insurance, registration, gasoline, all the things related to the car. And I was like, oh, of course, of course. I was just so eager to drive and have some independence.
But that's a very first gen experience, I think, of like, you've grown up, you have a job, you pay for your things. Whereas,
Yeah.
like, privileged Patty in the
Yeah.
book, who, I mean, I have those friends literally that they graduated high school and they got a
That was
car
our
as a
gift.
gift.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
whereas I had to buy my first car was $2,000. It was a 1994 Pontiac Grand Am, and those $2,000, I paid them cash, but it was so hard. I had to no es cierto. I didn't pay them. I paid $500 every like paycheck, and
Mhm.
so I paid it off, I guess, in like a couple of months. But that felt so hard. Now you
Yeah,
had bigger payments, and it
yeah.
was like a lot more.
Yeah, and the reason my mom, because people would ask her, "Why did you put this big debt on her to pay at such a young age?" And she says, "Well, I didn't want to use those $2,000 to buy her a used car and then have her stranded on the side of the road, with mechanical issues." So I understood that, and
Yes.
I'm thankful that because I'm like, I knew I was gonna have to work, right? So I knew I would have the income to pay for the car payment. But yeah, as a young girl, with my paychecks as a waitress and with tips, I mean, the income was low, right? Maybe like, I don't know, like 800 bucks a month, right? And half of it would go
To
to
the car.
to the car. Yeah, I wouldn't even see the money. Now as adults, like half of it goes to rent, right?
Yes.
But back then I was living with my mom. So yeah, that got harder when I went to college. When I went to college because I would see that a lot of my college friends, they didn't work, right?
Yes.
Maybe they were living off student loans, maybe they had a little bit more privilege and their parents would pay for their living expenses. And I'm like, well, I have student loans, maybe I can live off of that, right? And really focus on my studies and do well. But I still had this car payment where I'm like, "Oh, I cannot pay a car payment with student loans. That just
Right.
does not feel good." So I always had to keep working, and that was I worked all through college to pay for that car. So then to have graduated college a year later, and for my mom to threaten to take that away from me after everything I had sacrificed to pay for it was just like such a betrayal. And
Mm,
I didn't think she'd take it away, and she did. She did. so, so yeah, so I talk about that, and yeah, that was hard. That was hard because, and to this day, she doesn't recognize the huge financial impact it had on me. She's very irresponsible with money. So to her, it's just
mm,
like, oh, who cares? It's just a car. You get another one. Oh, I was actually about to pay it off and I was going to be debt free for a car for a couple years, but now I have to start all over again. She doesn't understand that part.
oof.
Yeah.
How is it for you to be a financial educator and still witness from family members and people that are close to you still have a bad relationship with money?
Good question. Nobody's ever asked me this. Yeah, I mean, because even my dad's a good saver. Luckily, he's very frugal. He doesn't spend a lot, but even he makes financial mistakes where like his cash savings, which he was bragging to me the other day, I'm at 80,000. And I'm like, and it's just sitting at your house?
Right.
Yeah.
Abajo del colchón, ¿no?
Yeah. Yeah. And I tell him, you have to invest it. You have to put it to work because it's just like not doing anything for you. Right. But he just doesn't feel he would like to invest it in buying a home in El Centro. He doesn't have good credit, so he wants to do it through me. I'm like, Dad, I'm a freelancer. The paperwork's gonna be a mess. He's like, that's not true. I got a home because they got a home in the 2000s before the crash, right?
Yes.
With my mom working in retail, him working at 7-Eleven, and it was so easy. And I'm like,
Of
yeah,
course.
back then they were just giving it out like candy, but I'm like, things
Yep.
have changed since then. So it's a lot harder to apply for a mortgage, especially as a freelancer because I don't have a W-2 job, right? So even yesterday, I'm so triggered because yesterday he brought it up too. Que no, me ayudaste con la casa. And I'm like, Dad, it's not my fault. You haven't taken care of your credit. Like, you should have been able to do this for yourself. You're a grown man. You've bought a house before. And I love my dad.
Tell them to read your book.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because then he'll shame me too. No que tú muy educada en las finanzas de cómo es posible, Giovanna, que no sabes que es tan fácil conseguir como un préstamo para una casa. And I'm like, Dad, that was literally 25 years ago when you experienced that. Before the crash, things have
Literally.
changed. Yeah, he just doesn't understand that things are different now. So that's hard, right? Every time I see my dad, I try to convince him to put that money to work, or at least in the bank in a high yield savings account, and I cannot get through to him. And then my mom too. I mean, my mom, I'm not close to my mom because she's very toxic and abusive. But I recently found out that she bought another car. And she had just gotten a new car that she had rolled over a balance from an old car. Yeah, like 2, 3 years ago. So the fact that now she's on a third car that she owes basically the balance from the first and the second car and just keeps rolling over. I don't know if people know what that is. Do you want me to explain what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to explain this because a lot of people think it's normal and it's not,
Yes.
right? So let's say I get Toyota Corolla right now, and then in a year I'm like, I still owe the car payment because it's a 5-year car note.
Mhm.
But I'm like, oh, I really want to get like an SUV because I have 2 big dogs now and I want to be able to go hiking and take them hiking. So then I can get a new car, right? But I still owe on the other car. So what the
Mhm.
dealership does is they will transfer that balance from that other car to your new
To the new
loan.
car.
Yeah, to the new car. So you're basically paying for the 2 cars, but you don't have the 2 cars, right? So my mom has done that 3 times. So the third car she has right now, she probably still owns money from the first 2. Yeah, and I've explained to her many times how that's such a terrible financial decision, and she doesn't listen. She doesn't take money seriously. She thinks that God will always provide for her, and she lives life by, like, the seat of her pants. Is that the expression? The seat of her pants?
I think.
Like, like, Leonardo DiCaprio in the Titanic, where he's like, "As long as I have, like, a couple of, like, bucks and, like, a place to
We're
sleep at
good.
night." Yeah, yeah. That's kinda how she is, very free-spirited, and it's for a lot of chaos. And right now she's in financial trouble, which of course it's going to happen, especially when she gets older and she's not able to work because she hasn't built a nest egg, So it is hard as a financial educator, to see people that I love, make poor choices. I will say I have had a positive influence on my brothers. One of my brothers is actually going to be 26 this weekend, and I taught him at an early age how to use credit cards the smart way. And he has
Nice.
an excellent credit score. Yes, he's a very good saver because I also incentivized him to save by me matching his savings. And I also taught him to invest in a Roth IRA at an early age. So even though he's not killing it financially, he's okay. He's got some good things going. And the same thing for my other brother Carlos, the one that I kicked out of Pasadena. Um, I've audited his 401k. Hey, let's see how much money you're adding. He has debt. Hey, make sure that you're being serious about paying it off. So it's easier with the younger family
Yeah,
members. With the older, it's always a little harder.
totally. And I think that question will serve the listeners too, because many
Yeah.
times, especially you also talk about the collective, um, individualistic and collective dynamics that we grow
Hmm.
up with, of like,
Yeah.
you know, you also mentioned you don't have to retire your parents, even though
Yeah.
that's like the expectation many times, or you could half retire them, like it doesn't have to be how it is expected because you can set the boundary. And so I think that you mirroring how, even though you have the book, you have all the things, you are still going through it is really powerful.
Yeah, it doesn't stop, and you think that my family would have taken the time to read it, at least my brothers, because they're young and they still have time, but nope, they haven't read it. Because people always ask me, is your brother mad that you wrote about him? And I'm like, he hasn't read the book. So no, the book's been out for almost a year.
¿Y le
Yeah.
preguntaste o no?
Yeah, I have. And he's like, no, they don't read. They like play video games and yeah, they're not readers.
Pero le dijiste like, I have a story to tell and I'm gonna share it.
Yeah, I said I talked about when we lived in Pasadena and the car situation. And he's like, "You did? Why?" And I'm like, "Because it taught an important story about the importance of having good credit." So, and it was facts, and he knows that everything I said was true. So yeah, he was just like, "Oh, I'm in the book." He kind of like was like happy, like, "Oh, I'm
Made it to
famous."
the book. Nice,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, yeah.
That's funny.
And all the things that I said about him being like a slob, I've said to his face. It's not like it's new
He
information,
knows. This
So
is not
yeah,
new.
yeah, yeah. Uh
Nice. Okay, let's take a quick coffee break because we're running out of time.
Sabrosura pa' ti que.
So, Gigi, do you drink coffee?
I started to when I started writing. I never used to, but with writing, it was just so boring to sit and write for 3 hours that I wanted something to sip, and so I started
Mm,
drinking coffee about 2 years ago. Yeah.
okay. And how do you drink your coffee?
um, I do an iced latte. Yeah,
Okay. So you're a cold beverage
cold
person.
coffee. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Do you brew it at home or do you go get it?
Both. Yeah. So typically at home, I love Dunkin' Donuts. And then I recently went to a local shop here in Pilsen, one of the Chicano neighborhoods here in Chicago. It's called Mi Corazon. It's so freaking cute. They had Belanova playing the whole time. They have little like Mexican hearts all over the walls. And I had an iced horchata latte. It was so good, and I can't stop thinking about it. Yeah, so shout out
Nice.
to Mi Corazon and Pilsen. They're on 18th Street.
Shout out to Mi Corazon in Chicago. Well, on my end, it's 3 o'clock, so I can't do coffee after, I don't know, anywhere between noon and 3 p.m. It depends on the mood. So I'm drinking water, but I
Mm,
am I am even a weird water drinker because I put like electrolyte salts in it. I
good.
put I go to tinctures with like
Mm,
herbs for my nervous system,
mhm.
like. And so one time I was talking to a client and she was like, Pamela, looks like you're drinking pickle water, like pickle juice. And I'm like, it's not pickle juice. It's just like water with a ton of things. But thanks. It's very hydrating,
Yeah.
that too. I don't drink straight up pickle
Do you
juice.
drink water by itself?
Yeah, but no, not really.
You don't
to
like
be
it.
honest.
Yeah, that's funny. My mom too. She's like, it doesn't taste like anything. And I'm like, it's not supposed to.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, you know what I love? Like fruit infused water with
Yes.
yeah, like lemon or strawberries, mint. Oh yeah, it's my
Mhm.
favorite.
Mhm. So what I do to, like, shortcut that
Mm,
is, which is not the best shortcut, not the healthiest, I guess, but it's I do sparkling, like, Waterloo,
mm-hmm.
sparkling water, and I do, like, half regular It's so weird. People are like, "You're so disgusting." So it's half regular water and then the other, because I use these, like, big mason jars,
Mm,
and so I put the can and then the rest is just regular water, so it has a little hint. It's not
mm.
quite just plain water. I don't know, I'm weird. Probably because I drink so much coffee, but
Whatever works for you, girl.
that's right. Let's get back to the show. Okay, so we before we went into the coffee break, we were talking about sharing the stories, and also you're very public, so you have a pretty big following. How do you discern what personal things to share and what to keep for yourself?
If it was up to me, honestly, I would share 90% of my personal stuff, but because my life is intertwined with my spouse, David, I do have to ask for permission, right? Because I just can't put his business out like that. And in the beginning, when I had a smaller following, he didn't care.
Mm.
And now, yeah, now that I have more eyes on me, he's like, can you not? Or can you rephrase that? So I have to respect that, which for me, I'm just like, oh, I wish I could share it. Maybe someday he'll let me. But how do I discern? Typically, if it's something that I can share, like a lesson with my community, or warn them about. So, for example, like a year and a half ago, when I had a hysterectomy, they removed my uterus because they found large fibroids. um, I wanted to kind of capture it in real time and explain to people what's going on. And I did some of that on IG stories because it's so easy on IG stories. But I wanted to make video content about like the recovery process, the products that I bought to help me with my recovery, how much it all costs, right? The
Mhm.
financial hit that it took because I couldn't work for 2 months. But I couldn't because I was still processing it all. And
Totally.
yeah, it took an emotional toll. So the way that I addressed that, so my surgery was in March, and I was better by around May. But then I found out that in July it was Fibroid Awareness Month. So then that's when I made a video of like, by the way, I had this surgery, and these are some things you should know about fibroids. These are some symptoms, and the sooner you catch them, the better because you have less invasive surgery options. Before that, I had also shared a video about like, hey, the reason I've been away from social media for a couple months is because I had some health issues, and I opened up about what it was, and people really thanked me for that because they were like, I had heavy periods and I didn't know that this could be a reason why. Now I
Mhm.
wanted to get it checked out, right? Or people being like, oh, I've had fibroids my whole life too, and they're awful, blah, blah, blah. I've had complications getting pregnant because of my fibroids. So it's just seeing that a lot of women have to deal with it, or people finding out about it that they didn't even know it existed.
Especially women of color.
Oh, yeah, especially Black women. Black women
Yeah.
have the most ¿cómo se dice? Probability of getting
Mhm.
fibroids than any other women. So yeah, so it was a topic that it's like a women's health issue, and if you don't have your health, like wealth doesn't matter, right? Well, your health is wealth. So I saw it very intertwined with my content. Yeah, so usually it has to be something that I'm in a good place that I'm able to share, and also something that if it might be negative, it's I always want to be able to share steps of how I would have done it different or like a teachable moment, right? Because I
Mm.
don't just want to like trauma dump or vent my problems on the internet.
Totally.
People, that's not what people sign up for. So that's kind of my approach to choosing what to share and what not to share.
Yeah, I think so. I tell my clients, because I have clients who are very, like, public facing,
Mhm.
and we often talk about that. And so I always tell them, is there a moral to the story? If
Exactly.
there isn't one yet, then the story's not ready to be shared.
Exactly. Yeah. If there's no moral to the story yet, you're still processing it, right?
Yes.
And it's too soon. And sometimes and in my stories, that's what I would do, just like, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'll keep you guys posted, right?
Mm,
But the stories, it's not the same, right? Because they go away. Where like the video, it just stays there longer. So I agree with that advice.
yeah. To bring it back to the book, Cultura en Cash, because we're running out of time. We could stay talking for a long time.
I know. Time's gone by so fast.
So fast. I really enjoyed reading it because it has exercises. I really love the archetypes of, there's different levels of
Of
people.
privilege. Yeah.
Hmm. And it gave a lot of perspective and compassion to also see myself and how you mentioned like your first viral post of where you show the
The black woman and the hurdles she has and the white guy, and it's a clear path. Yeah.
yes. And so how I have thought about it is like some people are born and the bridge is built and you have to
Yeah.
cross to the other side.
Yep.
First gens, immigrants, like depending on your level of privilege, you have to be building it as you go.
Girl, you have to like go up the hill first.
Right. You have to get there.
Yeah, yeah, like break through the forest, make carve your way through the forest, then get to it, then build it. Yeah, yeah.
Totally. And so I think the archetypes have really appreciated them because it gave that space to be like, oh, no, we're not the same. We might be the same age, we might run in the same circles. We could do the same thing now, but it
Right.
doesn't mean that we have come along the same way, you know?
Yeah, so that's why I like to open the book with that chapter, a different starting line, to point out that if you feel behind, it is because you had a different starting line than a lot of people that either had access to generational wealth and or generational knowledge, right? That help them make better financial choices. And they also don't have the added responsibility of having to caretake for older family members or extended
Or
family
younger.
like we do.
Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
totally. And so as I was reading it throughout every chapter, I wondered if I could give it to my mom in Espanol. So tell us more.
Oh my God, I'm so happy you asked me that. Yes, so I have gone on a book tour. I've hit 15 spots, and that question always comes up. Hey, I love this book, and thank you for giving me the tools I need to create a plan for myself. But I would love to share this knowledge with my parents or with my grandparents. But I don't have the language in Spanish to do this, right? And they feel most comfortable in Spanish. Do you plan to do a Spanish version? And of course, I would love to. I would love for a Spanish version to be out. I mean, the work is already created. Now it's just a matter of a translator doing the translation and the publisher putting it all together. What's holding me back right now is the cost. A lot of people think that I got a book deal for this book. I didn't. I self financed it. I basically self published it,
Wow.
which means that I would have to front the cost of the translator and the publisher, they gave me a quote for 20K, which is a lot cheaper than the other book. The other book cost me way more, the original one. But it's still money that I'm just like, I can't afford to keep paying for this. So I'm actually going to be looking for sponsors. Yeah. So small businesses that want to advertise themselves in the book, in a very particular, very specific niche book for the Latino community about money. So yeah, I'm looking for any like estate lawyers, any financial planners that I would trust and recommend that want to advertise themselves on that money book for our community to help cover those costs and then get that resource out to the community.
I love
So
it.
hopefully that'll be out. Yeah, hopefully sometime next year in 2025.
Awesome. And so if anyone listening, they're like, okay, sign me up. How do I do this? Where do they need to go?
They can contact me through my website, thefirstgenmentor.com, and they can mention that they heard me on Café con Pam and that they are interested in being a sponsor for the book, and we can chat more about that.
Yay. And pues de una vez, tell us all the places and spaces where people can find you.
Yeah, of course. So I am most active these days on Instagram, which is funny because I actually started on TikTok, but the TikTok algorithm has changed so much. It's just not the same app it used to be back in 2020. So my favorite place to hang out now is Instagram, and that handle is at Gigi, the first gen mentor. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, and there you can find me by my full name, Giovanna Gonzalez. If you want, you can also go to thefirstgenmentor.com, and there's links for all those social media websites. So you can just click on them directly.
Yeah. And also get the book. in all your favorite bookstores, local bookstores, bookshop.org.
Yes, I encourage you to support independent bookstores if you're able to. They probably won't have it in stock. They may, but if they don't, if you request that they get it in stock, they will get it in stock for you, and then you can support an independent bookstore. You can get it anywhere you buy your books online: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, um, iTunes, or whatever that equivalent, Apple Books, I think it's called.
Mhm.
And then also you can request it from your local library so that you can
Yes.
read it for free, and other people in your community have access to the book for free.
That's exciting. What's next for you?
Great question. So let's see. Finding the funding for the Spanish translation is next on my to do list. And then for 2025, my intention is to slow down a bit. And it's funny because I actually came across this post on Instagram about like this what Leos, what all the signs should do in 2025. And I don't know how much. I think you probably believe in that stuff.
Yes,
Do
for
you?
sure.
Yeah, yeah. So the one that said for Leo, it just completely spoke to me. It was like you spent all this year proving yourself, and now you got to slow down.
Wow.
Yeah, I put so much work into the book that I didn't want it to flop, that I've been nonstop promoting it since January. I did take a short pause during the summer just to kind of decompress and give myself a break. But even with Hispanic Heritage Month, it's been nonstop, just sharing the goodness of the book. And I love it. I love meeting my readers, but it is exhausting. It is tiring. And I miss home. I miss my partner. I miss my dog. I miss my bed.
Yeah.
So yeah, next for me is finding a better balance where I can still, and I think I'm going to be able to achieve it because basically with the book, I've been able to transition from making my money mostly as an influencer to now as a paid speaker. And the paid
Mm,
speaker work is not really year round work, it's more seasonal.
but it pays a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. So it pays during Financial Literacy Month in April. I'm in high demand then. The rest of the months I'm quiet. And then for Hispanic Heritage Month, September 15th through October 15th, it picks up again. So it's nice that I have really high intensity seasons. And then the rest of the months I can kind of recharge, rest, work on my business, things like that.
I love that. That's so exciting. Because I think, I don't know, I see one of my, in Strength Finders, one of my number one, I think, is futuristic, or my
Mm-hmm.
second strength.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm always like, what's coming ahead? I'm typically way too far into what people are ready.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned to embrace it. I've launched things that people are not ready, and then 2 years later, somebody else does it, and everyone loves it. And I'm like, see,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little too early.
You're ahead of your times. Yeah, girl.
I know. I just need to like align the timeline. But I think the future of work is that what we're moving into, what I'm foreseeing is those kind of like work like a solid amount of time, like a month, and then take a month off and work a month, and then
Yeah.
I think that's what we're moving
I
into.
agree. I don't think we were created to work year round. Like if you think about like farmers back in the day, they weren't working the whole year. They
Right.
had seasonal work and then they rested, right?
Hmm.
So I am loving that too, that with kind of the internet and technology, people are able to work seasonally and live frugally the rest of the time to be able to charge and
Totally.
recharge and be with family and travel and do things that fill their cup.
100%. Yeah. I talk about seasons and honoring all of our own seasons,
Hmm.
because to bring it back to your archetypes, you might have a season of build, like getting up the mountain first.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You just started a little bit later, and that's okay.
Yeah. Right now I'm at the season where I'm like in the lazy river, like it's just
You're chilling.
going. Yeah, I want to chill. I spent so much time trekking, trekking, trekking up, and now it's time to slowly go down a bit. Still do work here and there because that's important. I don't want to stop doing that. But yeah, just kind of taking the foot off the gas pedal a little bit.
Totally. Last few questions. Do you have a remedio that you want to share with us?
I do, and I don't know if this is common or if this is just in my family. So in my family, when we have a burn, so if we like touch something hot or something like that, we put mustard on the burn. Is that common?
I've heard of mustard, but it's not super common. I've heard more of toothpaste on a burn.
Oh, okay, okay. Interesting. Yeah,
But
because I
maybe
know
that's
now
also in my family, like I don't know.
for us it's mustard. And at first I'm like, how is that gonna work? But it has worked. So I always run to mustard whenever I do have a burn. Yeah, and that's in my family. Uh-huh.
How fun. And do you have a quote or mantra that you live by today?
I do. That one is closed mouths don't get fed. And it reminds me
Mm,
to always advocate and speak up for what I want, to put that into the universe and to make it happen.
yes. So good. I have so many questions to follow up on that, but we're out of time. Uh, and do you have a productivity tip, trick, or tool that you want to share with us?
Yeah, it might be counterintuitive, but for me, I've learned that I can't push through when I feel that I'm working on fumes. So instead, I take a nap, like a like an overwhelmed nap, just to, like, I have so many things to do. I'm just going to take a nap and go into another place for a little bit.
Yes.
And I always find that that recharges me and I feel better and not as tired and able to take on whatever challenge I'm working on. So,
Yeah.
try that. Try that next time that you kind of feel you have a lot going on.
I love that. Take a nap.
Mhm.
When in doubt, take a nap.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming to Café con Pam. Thank you for your work. Everyone go buy Cultura and Cash from your favorite bookstore, if not request it from the library. That's a big deal because
Yeah.
then when you request it from the library, more people have access to it. Because typically
Exactly.
they request like a couple, like 5+
Yeah.
books, no?
Yeah.
So it's really
Mhm.
helpful. Yay. Well, thank you.
Thanks for having me, Pam. It was so much fun.
Yay. Well, now, listeners, that was my conversation with Gigi, with the first gen mentor. I hope you are inspired. Please run to get Cultura and Cash. And during the conversation, we talked about the various ways where you can get it. In the show notes, we're going to give you the bookshop link so you can order it from your local bookstores. And if this is not a time and a place for you, you can absolutely request it from your local library. And it's actually really helpful when you do that because libraries, when they request the books, they typically order more than one. That way, there's more opportunities for other people to get access to books that are written from people like us, from our perspective, that show us different possibilities. And so, definitely run to get your book and dive in because it's really important, especially now. I think we are in the times where election just happened. I am recording this earlier than what this episode is going to release. And so I don't know what's going to be by the time this releases, but at least in this moment in time, getting a hold of your finances, supporting yourself, and understanding financial literacy is really important. And for me and my body of work, one of the wounds that we often work on from the calladita culture wounds is the wound of worth. And that's where your finances come into play. And it's really important for you to heal that part of ourselves. Money is a conversation that's been foreign for a lot of us. And so I think conversations like this are so important and can't wait to hear your thoughts. Tag me on the socials. Tell me how you feel about this. Tell me what came up because some things might have come up around your own personal money wounds and money stories that we may be carrying. At Cafe Con Pam Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Check out cafeconpam.com. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow on all the platforms. And we also have the Supporters Club. So if you are ready to dive into deeper conversations with me, you can support the show by joining the Supporters Club. And also, the link is in the show notes where you can check it out. It's a small contribution, it's 1 cup of coffee, basically. I just need you to pay for 1 cup of coffee a month, and you get access to behind the scenes episodes. You get access to conversations between you and you also get to make requests on topics that you would like me to dive into deeper. And so we can definitely dive in deeper into the wound of worth to get you some support as far as exploring your own wound of worth to see whether you are undercompensated or overcompensated in it, and provide some support because why not? what's important. Y bueno, thank you so, so much for being here. Y como siempre, stay shiny.
Sabrosura pa' ti que